It is the eve of PDiddy's sentencing, so what can we expect? Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is the Daily Diddy. I brought you daily trial updates in the PDiddy case until we got a verdict, and now it is time for sentencing. So, quick refresher. Diddy was charged with multiple crimes tied to the freak offs and things that were horrible events that were happening with Cassie as well as his ex girlfriend, Jane. The jury came back on as not guilty for three of the counts, but they did find him guilty of two counts of transportation for purposes of prostitution, commonly known as the Mann Act. He faces a maximum of 10 years in prison for each charge, and those charges can be stacked. So, in other words, he faces a maximum of 20 years if the judge were to sentence him back to back. So, the defense in this case had filed a motion to basically dismiss or throw out the entire verdict and the conviction, saying that number one, his First Amendment rights were being violated because he was a consumer and maker of amateur pornography. Judge was not having that. And also that the definition of the Mann Act, the prostitution under the Mann Act, should be more narrowly defined. So basically saying that he was not engaging in this type of transportation because it was a very targeted reason that he was engaging with these sex workers. Well, the judge was hearing none of it and was like, keep it moving. We're going to sentencing. So in advance of sentencing, both sides get the opportunity to request what they think an appropriate sentence would be, and they do this in writing. And additionally, there is a department, basically Department of Probation and Parole, that does what's called a pre-sentence investigation. So these folks will, and this is all across the country, this is not unique to the Diddy case. It happens in state court as well as federal court. Who actually does it may shift slightly, but usually it's probation or parole that handles this. And what they do is that they dig into your background, they talk to your friends, family, the victims, all of that, and then they come up with a recommendation of what they think an appropriate sentence should be. And the judge takes it into consideration in terms of what the eventual sentence would be. And also, both sides, both the defense and the prosecution, get a look at that report before sentencing and sometimes tailor their arguments accordingly. So, defense is asking for 14 months in prison, which is basically credit for time served because he's been in custody pretty much for the last 2 years. And the prosecution is asking for 11 years. The pre-sentence investigation report suggests 5 to 7 years. So, defense is basically like, Diddy's a changed man. He is taking responsibility for his actions. He started getting counseling and all of that. They are pointing to the long list of people that have written letters in support, including Young Miami, Stevie J, Carl Thomas, multiple members of his family. On the flip side, the prosecution is asking for 11 years in prison, saying that he's unrepentant and that he had physically and mentally abused people for years, including his girlfriends and his employees. And that, they said specifically, time and again, he has shown that he is only concerned with his own power and control. Only a significant term of imprisonment, meted out in a substantial number of years, can effectively deter him and show future victims that their abusers will be held accountable no matter their wealth and fame. Also, Cassie Ventura, her parents, and other former employees of Diddy submitted letters saying that they wanted him to go to prison and, basically that they fear retribution if he gets out. It was really tragic, especially Cassie's letter, where she talks about how her family moved away from New York out of fear of Diddy, and that she was incredibly traumatized and is living with the outcomes, with the fallout from what she had endured over her 10-year relationship with Diddy. She says, I know that who he was to me, the manipulator, the aggressor, the abuser, the trafficker, is who he is as a human. He has no interest in changing or becoming better. He will always be the same cruel, power hungry, manipulative man that he is. Mm. So again, when and on the flip side, looking at some of the letters that were written in support of him, young Miami was very detailed in talking about how he helped her career and that she felt he was a good man and he was really supportive and she knew a different side to him. So the judge is going to read all of these letters and as well as the pre-sentence investigation report and make a decision as to what the appropriate sentence would be. My guess is that it's going to land somewhere in the 5 to 7 years mark. Because think about it, Diddy did not have any criminal history, he didn't have any priors. Now we know that he was arrested for that gun charge back in the 90s, but he was never convicted. So, in terms of criminal history, which is something that weighs very heavily when judges look at sentencing, that's not really an issue here. So the question is going to be the voices of the survivors and whether the judge thinks that prison would be appropriate. I don't see him getting out with just, a couple years and that's it. I think it's going to be like a real sentence, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the maximum. And I don't think the prosecution is going to get the 11 years that they're asking for. But we will see. Sentencing is tomorrow, Friday, October 3rd. And so I'll be back with reactions in terms of what the actual sentence ends up being. And again, noting that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Stay informed, stay woke, and stay alert. Take care, y'all.